The Golden Rule. On the evening of the same Sabbath day when Jesus had been led by John to the sick people at the pool of Bethesda, they all sat together in the garden, around a campfire at Lazarus' place. The apostle Nathaniel asked Jesus, "Master, you have instructed us to treat others as we wish to be treated. But it is not entirely clear to me how we can always adhere to this commandment. Let me clarify my point with the example of a man driven by lust, who desires unchastity with his evil urges. Such a man might misuse this rule by expecting what he desires from another. How can we teach this to people?" When Jesus heard Nathanael's question, he immediately stood up, shook his head, and said, "Nathanael, Nathanael, do you not judge my teachings with wisdom and spiritual understanding? When I urged you to treat others as you want them to treat you, I was speaking to you apostles, men with high ideals, not to people who would be tempted to distort my teachings into a license to encourage wrongdoing." When Jesus had finished speaking, Nathanael stood up and said, "But Master, I ask this question because I suspect that many men will misuse such rules to manipulate others and try to gain spiritual power over them. Can you teach us further how we can explain this to new believers?" And when Nathanael had sat down, Jesus continued, saying, "I know very well, Nathanael, that you do not approve of such an idea of wickedness in your thinking, but I am disappointed that you usually do not add a true spiritual interpretation to my everyday teachings. My teachings are spiritual truths, spoken in human language. I will now teach you about the different levels of meaning that apply to the interpretation of this golden rule. Treat others as you wish to be treated. 1. The level of the flesh. This is driven by one's own ego. It is the level of hollow pleasure and momentary satisfaction. At this level, this rule does more harm than good. 2. The level of feelings. This plane is one level higher than that of the flesh and involves the person being able to empathize and allow feelings such as sympathy and compassion. At best, he feels happy. This feeling is not lasting, so this rule often only works temporarily. 3. The level of the mind. Now the reason of the mind and the intelligence of experience come into play. Self-knowledge dictates that such a rule is interpreted in accordance with the highest idealism. The person acts out of self-respect and will adhere to this rule with dignity but sometimes also legalistically. 4. The level of brotherly love. At this even higher level, one develops a selfless devotion to the welfare of fellow humans. It arises from the awareness of the fatherhood of God and the resulting recognition of the brotherhood of people. Here, one discovers a new, much purer interpretation of this fundamental rule. It will bear fruit. 5. The ethical level. And when you reach the philosophical level of interpretation, from which you truly understand the good and the bad of things, from here you can judge such a rule from an elevated position, as from an impartial third viewpoint. From here, this person acts not only from the desire to do the will of his heavenly Father but also because he is given insights into why it is good to live by this rule. 6. The spiritual level. And then, last but greatest, one reaches the level of spiritual insight and spiritual interpretation. This reveals to the seeker of truth that in this rule lies the divine command to treat all people as we imagine God would treat them. This is the highest ideal that can arise between human relationships. When it is your highest desire to always do the will of the Heavenly Father, then treat all people as you know I would treat them in similar circumstances,